good to be together. Hope you had a great Christmas, and I pray you are looking forward to this new year. Most of you who are listening to me have had what we kind of refer to as a brush with greatness. Maybe you got to meet somebody or you were just around them for a little bit, and we kind of like those ideas. Maybe you had a chance to snap a picture with somebody over the weekend. There was a golf tournament going on that had parents with their children playing golf, and there's a young lady named Nellie Corda. She is the world #1 female golfer, is my understanding, and yet apparently she had never met Tiger Woods, and so she had a chance to meet him, and it was kind of fun to watch because you could see that she was just genuinely excited, and so they stood beside each other and smiled, and they snapped a nice picture, and she had her brush with greatness, and I'm sure because she's a golfer, somebody that she looked up to and appreciated his skills and abilities as a golfer. A good friend of mine, she posted a picture. She was out doing some Christmas shopping, I guess, in the Columbus, Ohio area, and she's a big Ohio State fan, and there were a couple of basketball players from the Ohio State team who must have been shopping as well, and so she posted a picture on Facebook of her with them together. I need to ask her, though, because the Buckeyes have since had a COVID outbreak, and I hope that she's not the culprit. Just teasing. But we appreciate the whole idea of brushes with greatness. And yet reality is sometimes we miss brushes with greatness because we didn't realize or weren't ready or just maybe weren't paying all that much attention. When I was in college, one of the jobs that I had was cleaning the cafeteria. And in the evening after supper was over and the cooks had put everything away, we would just come in and put the chairs up and sweep and mop and wash everything down so it was ready for the next day's meals. Well, one evening our college was hosting a concert, and I was just in there cleaning along with a couple of other individuals, and the back door opened to the cafeteria, and a couple of guys walked through, and then a pretty good-sized gentleman passed through, and he said hi, and we said hi to him, and I didn't think all that much about it. And a little while later, one of the guys came in, and he goes, "Man, did you know that the guy who just walked through here was the starting tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals?" And I had absolutely no idea, but I'm not a Bengals fan, and so I didn't recognize him, and to be honest with you, I wasn't all that worried about it, truthfully. That maybe if he'd have been a Cleveland Browns tight end, I might have even known him because I followed them pretty closely. It doesn't, I guess, matter that I missed that brush with greatness, but there can be times when it might have been beneficial to us to have not missed that brush with greatness. And I think there will come a day when, for a lot of people, they will have had an opportunity to have a brush with greatness. They would have had an opportunity to know Jesus, to meet him, and yet he just passed by with barely a glance. In the hymn that we are looking today as we wrap up this series, the Hymns of Christmas, I want to talk about what child is this. The lyrics go, "What child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whom angels greet with anthems sweet, while shepherds watch their keeping. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste to bring him laud, the babe, the Son of Mary. Why lies he in such mean estate, where ox and ass are feeding? Good Christian, fear, for sinners here the silent world is pleading. So bring him incense, gold, and myrrh. Come, peasant king, to own him. The King of kings salvation brings. Let loving hearts enthrone him." I want to talk today about those lyrics just a little bit. First of all, it tells us in the lyrics who he is. This is Christ the King. In the book of Mark, the 8th chapter, it says Jesus and his disciples went on to the village, to Caesarea Philippi, and on his way he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" Some replied, "You're Elijah, or John the Baptist," and still others said, "A prophet." "But what about you?" Jesus asked. "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone. We appreciate why Jesus could attract a crowd. That's understandable. He did things and said things that the average person that they had met and encountered would have never even dreamed of doing. The Bible says that Jesus taught as one who had authority. When I preach and teach, you'll notice a lot of times I am quoting other people. And what I'm trying to do is to use them as an authority. But Jesus didn't need to quote anybody else. He would talk on behalf of the Father. He literally was God. He could speak with all authority on any given topic because he is the final authority. Jesus performed miracles, and many people saw those miracles. Other peoples could see the end result of those miracles. Lame people who were walking, deaf people who could now hear, people who were blind could now see. And rumor of this spread, and it's easy to understand why over time people would have just wanted to come and see this man and wanted to hear this man. And of course, we appreciate at the same time they would have formulated their opinions of him. And so Jesus rightly asked, "Who do people say that I am?" And you understand that in the book of John, the 3rd chapter, a Pharisee named Nicodemus, who was a member of the Jewish ruling council, he came to Jesus at night and he said to him, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one can perform the signs that you are doing if you are not from him." Nicodemus didn't really know what to do with God. He was taken by him, or by Jesus Christ. He was taken by him. The teachings that Jesus taught, many of them challenged his personal convictions and what he believed and what he held. But man, the things that he could do, he surely had to be from God. But it still begs the question, who is this man? And to be honest with you, I guess there's a lot of reasons why people, if you will, don't know Jesus. If I could, with the technology here, like show you pictures of people. There's a gentleman named John Rong. Some of you will recognize the name. Some of you will have absolutely no idea who he is. But he is the world #1 golfer. I don't know him, have never met him, but when I see his picture or I watch him on a golf tournament, but I'm aware of him, and there's a reason why I'm aware of him, because I enjoy golf. I mean, I will play golf once or twice a week, and I just enjoy that. I enjoy watching it on TV, and so I know who John Rahm is because that's something that, to a degree, is important to me. And that's just kind of how I think life works for a lot of us. If I said the name Mac Jones, some of you would have absolutely no idea who I'm talking about. But he's the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. Well, that's kind of a big deal. But not if you don't care about football or you're not a New England Patriots fan. Then you have absolutely no idea who Mac Jones is. And that's perfectly fine. If I said the name Naomi Osaka, some of you would recognize the name. Some of you probably know her or of her, but a lot of you have absolutely no idea who that is. But she's the world #1 tennis player. So if you're into tennis and you follow that, you probably are aware of her and know her and have watched her and listened to her talk. But for a lot of people, because you don't move in that circle or care about tennis at all, you have absolutely no idea who that person is. If I said to you, Amy Coney Barrett, some of you would, yeah, I know who that was. I remember hearing that name in the news a little while ago. For some of you have absolutely no idea who I'm talking about. But she's our newest Supreme Court justice. You see, what I'm trying to get at is, there's a reason why we kind of know the people we know. We've met them. We've engaged with them. What they do and what we enjoy share something in common, and so we become aware of them. But if what they're about and what we're about have nothing in common, then we have absolutely no idea who they are. And I think for a lot of people, that's kind of like where Jesus is in their life and in their world. There's who Jesus is, and there's what he's about, and there's who they are, and there's what they're about. And those two things have absolutely nothing in common. And so we don't. But that being said, most of us also appreciate there kind of comes times in our life where people we don't know or truthfully didn't even care about, all of a sudden things in our life change, and all of a sudden now we know them and we actually care about them. The easiest ones to pick on are, let's just say you have a heart attack and you never knew the heart doctor in your town or the heart doctor at your hospital, or the heart doctor that your family doctor refers people to. But when you had a heart attack and when you went into the hospital, all of a sudden somebody that you never thought much about or even cared about, now you know about him and you care about him. In fact, over probably the course of the next couple of years, you'll develop a pretty close relationship because he's that person who's trying to keep you alive. Maybe you don't have any idea who the oncologist is in your local hospital or who your personal doctor refers people to. But if you get a diagnosis of cancer, you'll get to know him because he's the person who will literally work day and night trying to do everything that they know how to do to keep you alive so that you can be there for your family and your friends and your kids and your grandkids and all the things that you enjoy and celebrate. And you'll get to know him because there will be something in your life will have changed, and you'll want to know that person. And that can be true of 1,000 illustrations that we could use. And yet reality is there will come a day, I think, when we want to know Jesus. Because perhaps something will change in your life and in your world where all of a sudden you will want to know him. Because reality is this man named Jesus, in so many ways that probably most of us don't even realize, he changed our world. The world that Jesus lived and moved in was vastly different than the world that you and I move in. We talk a lot about equality and fairness and justice, and those kind of words were pretty common to us. We use them pretty routinely. But in Jesus' day, maybe they existed, not as we know them. They would have been in Greek and Hebrew and other languages, but they weren't valuable or important. And yet all of a sudden when Jesus came into the world, he dramatically began to change things. If you want to explore some of the many ways in which Jesus has literally changed the world, you can explore that in a book by John Ortberg named Who Is This Man? Just one of the ways in which Jesus changed the world was how we care and look at and think about people who are kids, people who are sick, the affirmed, the depressed, the anxious, those who struggle in this thing called life in ways that many of us are simply not familiar with. Just to read a paragraph from his book, John writes, since that birth, the birth of Jesus Christ is who he's speaking of, babies and kings and everybody else look different at us now. As in the poignant list of David Bentley, the autistic, Down syndrome, who are otherwise disabled child, the derelict, the wretched, the broken man or woman who has wasted his life away, the homeless, the utterly impoverished, the diseased, the mentally ill, the physically disabled, exiles, refugees, fugitives, even criminals and reprobates. These were viewed by our ancient ancestors as burdens to be discarded. To see them instead as bearers of divine glory who can touch our conscience and still our selfishness. This is what Jesus saw that Herod could not see. And reality is what John writes of is true. This man named Jesus Christ literally changed the world. Kids who were just discarded. We don't, as a general rule, practice that anymore. Yes, those things tragically happen, but when they occur now, if we find out who did it, they get in trouble. We put them in prison because we don't treat children like that. People that used to laugh and make fun of and ridicule. We don't do that. That's insensitive. That's bullying. That's a lot of different things, and rightly so. And where a lot of that attitude and spirit comes from goes back exactly what Jesus tried to teach and instill in us. Jesus literally changed history. We may not recognize it, even care or appreciate it, but there may come a day. In fact, the Bible tells us there will come that day when Jesus Christ will come back. And people who have no idea who he is, in fact, never even cared. He wasn't on their radar screen for 1,000 reasons. The Bible tells us every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. You are Jesus. Who is this man? Well, it's easy to understand why a lot of people don't know him, have any idea who he is. But as God's children, I pray that we would have a desire to help them to know who he is, because he doesn't want to just change the world. He wants to change eternity. You see, that's why he came. Did you notice it in the words of the song that we're looking at? Good Christian fear, for sinners here, the silent world is pleading. Sinners. I know we live in a world where we kind of view ourselves not so much as sinners, but people who just make mistakes. I was watching a football game last night, and the team was trying to march down to score a touchdown, and they were moving the ball pretty good. It was 2nd down and 10, though, and they needed to get a few more yards, and the quarterback threw the ball to a receiver. He was wide open. It hit him right in the hands, and he went to pull it into his chest to turn and run, and when he pulled it down, he just dropped it, and it fell to the ground. Instead of being another 1st down or perhaps 3rd down and 1 or 2, it was 3rd down and 10. That's hard to get in the NFL. Those guys are good. And on his way back to the huddle to talk to the quarterback and to the team, he touched his chest and he said to everybody, "My bad, my mistake." Well, it's a football game. But what about when we sin? What about when we cheat on our spouse? And they find out about it, and we go to them and we touch our chest. "My bad." Somehow that doesn't seem to cut it, does it? When somebody hurts you, really hurts you, and you summon the courage to approach them about the pain. If they just touch their chest and say to you, "Hey, my bad, my bad," somehow we feel like that's not quite enough. We want a little more. And on occasion, if you will, in our lives, in our world, the weight and the burden of sin does press in against us. We begin to see it and to feel it in our lives and in our heart. And we know that it's real, that it's big. Some of you will remember back a number of years ago, the Space Shuttle Challenger. I guess it was in the news so much because people who were not astronauts were going to be a part of this crew who were going to go up into space. I think one of them was a school teacher, and there were others, and so it was just kind of fascinating to watch and to think about, exciting for them. The day came for the launch, and I know not everybody was watching, but a lot of people were, because it was just a little different than usual. And it took off, and everything seemed pretty normal. But as it went up there into space, all of a sudden there was an explosion. And if you were living then, or you've seen the pictures or read a little bit about it, you'll remember it just kind of looked like it just broke apart, and there were these like vapor trails or whatever that is. It just kind of broke apart, and you were just kind of like, wow, what just happened? And of course, tragically, everybody who was on that journey perished. And of course, the people who were in charge, they went looking. What happened? What went wrong? Why did so many people so tragically die? And it was an O-ring, I guess. The disaster was caused by the failure of 2 redundant O-ring seals in a joint in a space shuttle's right solid rocket booster. The record low temperatures of the launch reduced the elasticity of the rubber rings, reducing their ability to seal joints. It's like, an O-ring, I'm sure it's a lot fancier than what I think of as an O-ring. To me, an O-ring, like that's the little thing that when you have your garden hose and you stick it in there and you screw it on to the nozzle on the thing on the side of your house and you turn it on, and the O-ring is the thing that keeps it from leaking. And like in the whole scheme of this thing in the world, it's nothing. And yet here it leaks, and all of a sudden and I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I think for so many people who listen to this, that's what we treat sin as. It's nothing. It's just who cares? It's no big deal. But all of a sudden, you come to find out, well, that was a huge deal. Everything hung in the balance. And he tells us, if you will, that's what ultimately I think a lot of people will find out someday really does matter. That sin really is, though we treat it as no big deal, as a mistake, as an oops, as a my bad, we'll tragically find out that it was a big deal. All those lies that we told, all of our sin, all of our indiscretions, they were a big deal. And yet I think it's important for us to appreciate, he says, that they are pleading. They are asking. Pleading. Such a strong word, I guess, in my mind. I've seen and been around people who ask for things. And somehow to me, pleading seems different than asking for something. I've been in grocery stores. I've had my kids. I've watched other kids who they kind of harp and pester at their parents about, can I get this? Can I have this? And they want to throw things in there, and parents get frustrated. Put that down. Put it back. Whatever. We're going to go. When you get home, you're whatever. But they're asking you. Somehow, it is what it is, but it doesn't feel like. But probably most of you listening, you've been around somebody who was pleading. I guess the one that comes to my mind today goes back a lot of years ago. Tim and Bonnie Elliott had a son named Todd. Todd was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Kind of the way it was described, the doctor wanted to go in and remove that tumor from inside his brain. And the way the doctor described it, it would be like, and most of you are familiar with the green jello with pears in it. He goes, I need to take the pear out without disturbing the jello. And I guess it was just a vivid enough illustration that sticks in your mind. You're like, I'll bet that's hard to do. And it is. And the day came for his surgery, and people gathered there in a waiting area. And every time the clock would go to a new hour, Tim would ask everybody to get up, and we would go back into this back room, kind of like a chapel. And we would pray together. And every time, Tim Elliott would be the first one to pray for his son. And he pleaded with God to spare his son. And I can remember that pretty plainly today, even though it was probably 35 years ago. Pleading. And yet, if you will, when we ask ourselves, why did Jesus come? And we ask ourselves, who is this child? That's what Jesus Christ did at the cross. That's what Jesus Christ does for you and us, you and me. He pleads with his Father for us. Because though we may not know who he is and we may not understand what sin really does to us, he does. Nobody knows more what sin does to us than Jesus Christ. And so he would go to the cross and he would literally lay down his life for us. He would plead with his Father for us to save us. That is the gift of Christmas. That is ultimately what Christmas is all about. And if you do not know who Jesus Christ is, I pray that you will come to know him. I pray it doesn't take something really bad or hard or tragic for you to come to know him. But for some of you, I know it will be that. And in that moment, it may dawn on you that you are a sinner. And I pray that you will always know from the words of this hymn what Jesus Christ did for you. He pleads for you before his Father. And because of that, we can be called the children of God. And that is the greatest gift that you will ever receive. And that is what Christmas is all about. I pray you had a great Christmas season. But if you don't know Jesus Christ, I pray that more for you. Who is this child? He is Jesus.